Kutanga isusu mina tikutaurire 1 tikudzokera madrugs 2 atikuregister kuvhota and isusu kana tazovhota zvekuti ruling party yenyu
chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe nechokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe kana dzimba dzedu dzingadai dziri dzavo mawanzira vanoita dzimba dzavo vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba 10 pamunhu mumwe chete.
In the midst of the hustle and bustle in Harare, there is a tussle and hustle for power. Central government and local authority, a clash between governments, which is based on a clash between political parties. ZANU-PF, who lost to the MDC alliance in council elections, but now controls the center of power through the local government minister, July Moyo. They are clashing, and this is affecting service delivery. Now, just a few weeks ago, central government ordered demolition of Harare vending stall. This is the second such blitz. More demolitions have been ordered through central government in Budiriro, in other areas around Zimbabwe. Now, here on the situation right now, in proud partnership with the IRI, we look at who is to blame for the demolitions, who is at the center of bringing pain to the suffering masses of Zimbabwe, struggling to make a living from vending, struggling to put a roof over their head in this once majestic town of Harare, the sunshine city where the sun doesn't shine anymore. Now, these are the voices of the people who are affected. This is what they think about who is to blame or who is not to blame and why.
Aisinongoblema hurumende vozi kupwanya uko vari kungotipwanyira vasina kana solution. Takambopwanyirwa musi wa 19 June last year. Izvo futi vakazouya vakatipwanyira futi musi wa 8 January. Pasina kana solution, musika wacho havasi kuvhura. Havana kana solution yavari kuita kuti vakakupwanyira vozouya vachitiita iso. Tinongozodzimara futi tadzokera panzvimbo yevana vachiti haiti.
Nini ndopomera kanzuru nehurumende yacho ndoya ndinonyanya kupomera vanotuma kanzuru andika zvinhu zvese zvinoitika zvinobva kuhurumende, saka zvabva ikoko andika kanzuru inozoya yotipwanyira, saka ndo vanhu vandinopomera ivavo.
Igovernment ndovane masimba acho kuti kanzuru hainganotopiwa order negovernment.
Council ndo yatiri kunyanya kupa nekuti ndivo varidzi veland inoyi. Chiri kunyanyanetsa ndechekuti mupedzanamo uyu wakavharwa. Zvakavharwa mupedzanamo, isusu nekunzwa nzara nhamo nei kwakuchitorongana kuti isu ngatichitorongedzei pano titesei titengese. Tatengesa nekuona kuti kuzuva rinenge richitipisa kubva makuseni kusvikira ridai kwakuchitorogadzira zvikweshe kuti tione kudzirwa ufuchi takabudiswa mukati umu mune mashedzi. Tikabuda kuno kunze kanzuru ikamboda kutengesa chimusika ichi ikamboda kudii zvikambonzi kudii, isusu tiri pakati pevanhu vanenge vachinetsana. Chatiri kuda isusu kuti musika ngauite se ngauvhurwe.
Zvipomerwa chaizvo chaizvo tinopa kukanzuru kozi iyo inenge ichiti ma-illegal structures, saka tikwanisi kuti tikuregei muchisenzera panapa zvisiri pamutemo. Ende isu tinozvinzwisisa kuti zvatiri kuita hazvisi pamutemo, but hatina imwe option, hatina kokuenda, hakuna mabasa, hakuna zvimwe zvinhu sofwa zvatingati tingakwanisa kuti tingararama nazvo.
Tinopemera kanzuru nekuti kanzuru ndo yatinoziva kuti ndo yatinoshanda nayo, ndo inonzi varidzi venzvimbo dzino. Kanzuru ndo inoshanda muno muHarare. Toziva kuti kanzuru ndo inotonga Harare, ndo inotakura marara, ndo inoita sei zvese.
The people in Mbare continue to come back. They are back. Even weeks after their properties were taken by police and their vending stalls destroyed. They say they have no choice, they have no option. They'll keep coming back because they cannot have any other way of putting food on their tables except vending. Industries are closed, job losses are serious. Even those who are employed are unemployed. A teacher is earning a basic salary of less than $120 on the black market. The people are suffering, and vending appears to be their only utopian. It appears to be their only solution, and these are their voices.
Tinodzoka because hatina zvekuita, ndo zvatinotongoita, ndo upenyu hwedu. Saanongoya vachingotandanisa tichingodzoka ipapo futi. Ndo upenyu hwedu, ndo pane chikafu chevana, ndo pane chingwa chevana vechikoro. Ndo pazvototi zvinezvi zvakatotishungurudza, zvakatotidzorera mashure because sezvizvi zvikoro zvaingonzi zviri kuda kuvhurwa. Vana vachitobhadharira nei-school fees. Vachitipwanyira pasina imwe solution yekuti endaya.
Tinodzoka nekuti hatina zvatinokwanisa kuita. Inini wakatarisa ndane more than 20 years ndiri venda. Ndichitengesa, ndorarama nekutengesa. Handina chimwe chinhu chandinokwanisa kuita. Ndotoona kuti kutengesa mhuri yangu inodya zviri nani.
Tinodzoka pana nokuti tine nhamo, ndo patinoraramira kuti tiri mavhenda. Teida kuendesa vana vedu kuzvikoro, tinoroja, teida kubhadhara marendi kumba, saka tikagara kumba hapana chinofamba, mhuri inofa nenzara.
Chinoita kuti tidzoke inzara nenhamo. Tine nherera, vamwe tiri shirikadzi takasofirwa nevarume kare. Dzimwe nherera chaidzo dzinotoshandira pano dzisina vabereki, vana vechidiki vanotengesa nematebhura ari pano.
Hatina option, hatina kokuenda, hatina mamwe mabasa kuti tinokwanisa kunge tichiita. Saka ndo zvinotipa kuti tirambe tichidzoka panapa, ndo patagara tichingotengesera, tichitiza, tichingodaro bhozi hatina kumwe kokuenda. Asi kudai papane pamwe kuti tiri kuenda panotenderwa, pari legal, like pambedza namapa taimbonge tichitengesera zvakanaka pasina kumhanyisana, marenzi achitorwawo zvakanakawo zvinova zviri pamutemo. But now makavharwa, saka tisi kukwanisa kunge tichitengeserawo mumo, saka tinonge tichitongotengeserawo pano panze ipapo apa, ndo patina pose pari zvino.
Matambudziko atakatasana nawo ndo anotipa kuti tidzoke. Senge isusu vamwe nezera redu hatina kana zvekuita, titori shirikadzi dzinotoshandirawo mhuri dzadzo. Saka kuti ndigare kumba ndotoshaya kana mari yekutenga kana madomasi. Saka unotoona kutotegera ndingodzokera pandinowanawo kana 2 cents.
Isi rungoti kana vachitaura kuti patiri kushandira hapaite, ngavatiendese, ngavati kana vatipwanyira votitaridza panoita pacho, pavanotisa zvakafanana nemumakashama, but isusu varungoti but yezvinezvi vanosiya vatipwanyira, tongodzoka futi pasina chavatiudza futi kuti endai pakati. Saka zvinhu zvacho vari kuita zvinhu zvisina solution.
Inini chandanchikumbira kuhurumende ndeyedu handitika, ngavatibvise vaine solution, vaine pekuti tiende, ngavatage pekuti isusu tiende semavhenda tobhadhara hatirambe, voti tiwane pekuenda, pekutengesera pariraiti. Takanga tiri mukati umu, manga muri raiti, tanga chibhadhara kukanzuru zvakanaka tisina anga achiti disturb. Saka i-lockdown hayo yakakonzeresa izvozvo neCovid, but ngavaveone chikumbiro chedu ndechekuti hatombodi pano pacho hatombopadi, asi hatina zvekuita, tine mhuri dzikuda kurarama. Honai zvino zvikoro zvikuda kuvhurwa, hatina kana chekuti tibhadharire vana vacho kuchikoro.
Tachikumbira kuti government dai atibatsirawo yativhurirawo mupedzanamo mataishandirawo tadzokerawo unoshandawo zvakanaka tisingamhanyiswe nepolisi, nokuti vamwe nezvamwe vazvirema vari kubayiwa nezvipikiri, marata ari kucheka vanhu. Tinenge tine makastoma anenge achiuya achititengerawo, achingoona polisi ari kubva atiza takuwara nemanosi, hatisina chatiri kutengesa panze pano.
Meseji yatinayo nehurumende nekanzuru, tine meseji yekuti ngavationewo sevanhu. Vakatadza kutiona isusu sevanhu, hatizivi kuti vanenge vada kuti tese isu tiri pasi pavo, tiri mukati memaoko ekanzuru nehurumende. Tiri vanhu vavo isusu, hatina kumwe kwatingakwanise kuenda. Takatombobuda kuenda kune dzimwe nyika tikatadza kugara tikadzoka futi, kureva kuti nyika ino ndeyedu. Saka ngavationewo sevanhu, vatinzwirewo ngoni nenyasha kuti tiwanewo kushanda. Kana vasina kuvhura ichi mashedhi edu tovakawo votibvumidza kuvaka mashedhi kusvika varonga zvekuita nesu. Pane kuti isusu tirambe tichinaiwa, mvura inonaya, hembe dzacho dzinonaiwa nemvura, mabhero acho anonyura. Kuti vanhu tizofunga kutengesa mufungeka ikonomi yenyika yatakatoona yakadhakwa. Haungamuke everyday kusena wakatatsana mwana ruda chingwa, iwe wakagara zvekuita uchizviona kuti ndokwanisa kuita ichi, ndokwanisa kuita ichi. Saka ngavatibatsirawo nenhau iyoyo chete vakatigonera ipapo kuti vationewo sevanhu tiri panze pacho, sezvo varamba kutivhurira musika. Hatisi kukomblena kuti ngavavhure kana kuti hatisi kuti chii. Kana vakaramba kuvhura, chatiri kukomblena chekuti staff yedu ngavasiye staff, vasiye mashedhi edu. Kana vachiona kuti havanei nesu, ngavasiyane nesu futi. Isusu ticharamba tiri pano, vosi chekupedzisira vanhu vachabhoikana otanga kudzosera. Hondo ya civil war, of which zvinolidza kuti vanhu vari maresidential area vari mudhuze vakakandirwa mategas, mune vana vacheche varimo. Vanosikanda mategas ma100 volume yekuti kana imbuka chaiyo unoiona yakafa netaiga iroro. Zvinhu zvisina kunaka. Saka chatiri kuda kungoonekawo sevanhu chete.
Inini chichemo changu ndechekuti kudai vambotarisisawo kuti munyika medu zvinhu hazvisati zvanyatsogadzikana, ende mabasa acho hakuna makambani, hakuna maindastry, kokuenda chaiko isusu hatina. Saka izvozvo ngavambonatsoziongororawo kuti hakusi kutodawo kwedu kuti tinge tichitengesera pamhene pakadai patine tichinaiwa tichitsva nezuva. Zvinhu zvinenge zvakatongotiremera kuti tigare mudzimba. Saka tine tichiti isusu ngavatipo pacho panonzi panotenderwa, mupedzanamo uripo hausi kusenza zvamanje manje. Ndo watatakamira kuti udai wavhurwa uko kuchishavo chagrounds vangotaura, but hatisati tanatsokuona direction, hatisati zvananechedza kuti tiri kupiwa here kana kuti. Saka ipapo taida kuti vatipo panobvumidzwa pokutengesera pacho. Ndo zvichemo zvatinazvo sofa. Vanofanika kutipa ivo kakuti kana kuri kuti tinotarirwa nzvimbo tichipiwa matebho kuti tinotengesera zvisina mutauro mangwana, kuti kana tapuwa tebho yonzi apa ndo pako magovera vanofanira vachitiita like mukati umu. Umwe nomwe anogona kunge aine tebho yake zvipamutemo zvinotozikamwa nayo kanzuru, zvoti inenge chiuya chikolekta kana dziri mari panzvimbo pangu pane chinziva kuti apa ndo pandiri kufanika kunge nditengesera. Anokwanisa kungondosvika ndondozvigadzika inini ndega pasina directives.
Tokumbirawo hurumende kuti dai yatibatsira, yatiwanisawo nzvimbo dzatinokwanisawo kushandira, satisingaone dambudziko rekuti toswera tichimhanya tichitandaniswa pano. Naizvozvo neiyo kanzuro ngaitibatsirawo itipowo nzvimbo dzatokwanisa kana kuti kubhadharawo mari yatinokwanisa iyo tokwanisa kushanda zviri safe.
Voting remains critical. Voting for people who represent you in decision making, local councils, MPs, and the president. Now, the people are losing hope. They don't know why they keep voting, because after voting, their lives don't change. Things get worse. And those they think have power are the ones who come to destroy their livelihood. They have lost hope. But here, on the situation right now, we explore, should people continue to vote? Does voting make sense? Is local government a significant tire of governance? Does it have real power? Does it matter? This is the discussion.
Techitarisira kuti isusuka kuvhota kwatinenge tichiitaka tenge chivhotera mutungamiri achazotibatsira mangwana. Inini kubatsira vanobatsira but hatina zvatachanyatsobutsikana nazvo. Kana vachitidzinga kudai tiri muZimbabwe, tiri macitizens eZimbabwe, tinenge tapedzisira takuvashora kuti havana zvavari kutibatsira. Of which vanenge vachibatsira havo, asi tovashora nekuti hapana. Takangogara mukatarisa munyika musina mabasa pekutoenda tinoshanda, takazvara vana vanoda kuenda kumabasa, but we end up tiri kurovana nevana vadiki tamavhenda. Asi kana vaine chekutiteka ngavatsvake, hurumende yacho ngaione kutoitei sevanhu vemunyika mavo.
Nyaya yemaelection inobatsira, si kana vachingouya vachingotipwanya tenge tingori pano kuti hatina kwekuenda.
Zvemapurisa hwaudyira hakusina kusina mbavha. Vanouya vachitora because vanenge vapiwa directive kubva kumusoro. Tenge tabhadhara mari handiri kuona chimba ichi chogona kubhadhara kwaari, ndiye muridzi wechimba handika. Iye nekanzuro yake vanodhila vese. Isusu hatidzikwa zvinozvoenda. Tongozototora zvinhu zvedu makuseni. Iye achanobhadharawo kanzuro, ndiye ane mapepa ekanzuro.
Ameno matebho mukatumu. Irresponsibility yekanzuro manje kuti ichipindura. Because isusu hatikwanise kupindura zviri kuitika mukati mumasitira sei hatisi kuzviziva. Chatiri kuziva ndechekuti tikuda kuti musika uite sei uvhurwe. Zvekunetsana kwavo yamhinduro yekanzuro manje yakuitika chakonzeresa kuti musavhurwe chii hatisi kuziva. Chatiri kuda ndechekuti musika ngauvhurwe. Kana vatadza kuvhura musika ngavasiyewo kamashedhi edu atinenge takaisa tichitengesa titengese. Kana kusvika vavhura, kana vasingade kuvhura ngavatisiye isu titengese. Zvapedza kudaro vanotumira kanzuro inotora zvinhu zvevanhu. Vanhu vekanzuro votora zvinhu zvevanhu monyudza zvinhu zvakahodwa nemumwe munhu. Chakashandira munhu otorera munhu safu yake oenda nayo, dzimwe musi unodzokera zvakashota, zvimwe wosvika ukotera onzi hakuna zvinhu zvabiwa. Vanhu vekanzuro vaba zvinhu zvedu, vapedza kuba zvinhu zvedu, ngavasiye stafu yedu yakadaro, tikavaka mashedhi edu, vosiya mashedhi akadaro. Chatiri kuchema ngavasabvise mashedhi edu, ngavasatumira vanhu vanoba zvinhu zvedu nekuti kanzuro imbafa.
Nyaya idzi dzakangotaurwa panews, zvinhu zvinongotaurwa muredhiyo zvatongonzwa zvichingotaurwa, asi hatina chatati taona. Prafuti zvavanotaura zvacho zvakafanana nekuti isinotaura nezvekumashawasha kunonzi kunoda kugadzirwa. Asi umu macho makatonaka kudhara hamusi kutaura nezvavo. Asi vakangoti 2 big markets opening, hazvangotaurwa paredhiyo. Asi kuti tizoona information kana kuti vanhu vakauya paground vachitaura kuti toda kuti mudai nekuti makapwanyirwa toda kuti mudai. Isusu kwatiri sofa hatina information yatatitarisa.
Takanga tanzi isusu tinenge tichifanika kunge titengeresera mukati mupedza namomo kana pamashawasha grounds. But so far pasati pava any action inoratidza kuti zveshuwa pane chaedza kuti chingakwanisa kunge tichipinda mukati, hatisi kuziva kuti zvikonzero zvii. Saka ipapo patinongoramba tichidzoka panapa kuti tiende kupi ukoko kwavakanga vati tiri kuenda hatisi kukwanisa kuzi hatina so far madirectives kuti tizoti tiri kuita sei. Saka tinongoramba tichidzoka panapa.
Welcome to this edition of The Situation right now here on your favorite station, Heart and Soul TV and Radio. With me, your host, as always and as usual, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Now, this is the prime current affairs show in the country. In this edition of The Situation right now, we are partnered with IRI and we're talking about democracy, participation, and moving our nation forward. Now, in the recent past few weeks, we have seen a collision of local government and central government. The two have been on a collision course and have been name-calling and blaming each other for the problems that beset our urban local authorities. In fact, the dispute is the MDC, an opposition political party in our country, Zimbabwe, controls urban local authorities. But they have to report to ZANU-PF, which is their perennial arch rival in the political sphere. The question that we seek to answer is the relationship between local government and central government healthy to service delivery? Does it benefit the people? And if not, what should be done? Now in studio to help me discuss this and to help us as a nation find a solution, I'm joined by Wisdom from HStvZim. Welcome, Wisdom, and thank you for coming through.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm also joined by Emmanuel from Bulawayo Progressive Residents Association, who has traveled all the way from Tutuziatunya, the city of kings and queens. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for coming through.
Thank you, Blessed. The pleasure is all mine.
Beautiful. And online, I'm also joined by Tembelani Dube, who is in Bulawayo. Thank you very much for joining us, Tembelani. Beautiful. Now, I'm just going to start with you, Emmanuel. From Bulawayo, things seem to be a little bit better than Harare. But let's talk about the relationship between central government and the local authority. How is this improving or helping deliver service in your view, and from, actually not from your view, but from, as people who are on the ground, what you know, give us the meat and balls of it.
Okay, thank you, Blessed. I think the insinuation that things are better in Bulawayo, I hear it all the time when I'm in Harare, but it used to be better. I can't say it's still the same anymore. You know, a lot of things have happened. The ground on which we are standing, you know, has shifted quite drastically. So as I speak, you know, we are still reeling from the effects, you know, of uncollected refuse, of a very stringent water regime. You know, we are having water problems even when water sources are full, you know. So things are quite bad, and trying to explain it, you know, you cannot explain it outside the, you know, the conundrum of the bigger political conjecture, you know, where you have a constrained, you know, local state periphery relations, you know, center periphery relations. So the relationship between central government, you know, which is essentially the mother, you know, for all local authorities, and the local authorities is quite, you know, bad to say the least, especially at the present moment. And that has pitted, you know, ordinary residents who inhabit far from the centers of power, who have become victims, you know, of centralized thinking, centralized program, centralized budgets, you know, and the underfunding. So we have currently witnessing, I think, one of our worst moments. It's unfortunate Bulawayo might be considered the best city in Zimbabwe currently. You know, when you, I'm sorry to say this, when you look at, for example, Chitando, you know, which is considerably number one on the far extreme end, you know, but we have some ingredients of Chitando in Bulawayo. You know, a lot of things are not going well that we think, you know, as central government, local authority, and residents need to address.
I'll come to you, Wisdom. You, on the basis of an organization that has been talking to citizens, that has also been talking to association of citizens, and also those in authority, as a journalist, where do you locate the center of the crisis in service delivery in Zimbabwe?
All right, thank you. In interacting with the residents and authorities, I'm glad to say recently we opened another new site which covers Bulawayo. We only had Masvingo, Marondera, Harare, and Mthuli. So I'm glad to say we've opened another one that will be covering Bulawayo. So in our interactions with the residents and authorities, we've discovered that for residents, the issues are very basic. They simply want services delivered. They simply want their refuse collected. They want access to water. They want good roads. But when you interact with the authorities who are responsible for those for providing those things, they come in a lot of angles and a lot of issues. If you talk to council, they bring in the issue of government getting involved extremely too much. If you go to government authorities, they say we are not responsible for that. We councils are independent and all that. So
within the circle of those that are in positions of authority, there is no cohesion, there is no togetherness, there is no uniformity of thought of what is supposed to happen. But for residents, the issues are very simple. They just want their bins collected. So that absence of cohesion within the circle of power, I think, is the root cause of all the problems, because no one is really trying to pull together. They are not pulling together. There is a lot of politicking that is happening. Government is trying to sideline authority so that people get disenchanted with them to say, opposition councils cannot run these things. Whilst the council is also trying to make things happen, but it's saying government is sabotaging us. So there's a lot of politicking, there's a lot of shady things that are going on, and residents are suffering.
Now, Tembelani, is from where you sit, do you think that local authorities are fully responsible for the day-to-day running of councils, like especially in Bulawayo, where you're from? Do you think that you, as residents, you have right to put all full weight of your demands on the local authority?
Well, you refer to the Constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a unitary state. And that means that all the resources that we get, or all the resources that are supposed to be dispersed to the different local authorities, are usually from the central government. As much as we can have some of the resources that are paid directly to the local authorities, but we all know that the resources that the local authority can access directly from the residents is not enough. So to say that local authorities are 100% to blame when it comes to poor service delivery, we won't be telling the truth, because in Zimbabwe everything is centralized. Had it been that we are talking about maybe a federal state or a fully devolved state, then we'd be saying, Bulawayo, for instance, the local authority is supposed to blame. But in this case, we all know that the bulk of the resources have to come from the central government. So for central government to fully blame or lay the blame solely on the local authorities, they won't be sincere to the masses and to themselves. So what we are simply saying is that we cannot put the blame solely on the local authorities, because we know that the resources that are supposed to assist must come from central government in most cases through the national budget. So if the national budget is not addressing the needs of the different local authorities, then we can't expect those local authorities to answer your question. We cannot simply say that local authorities are supposed to carry the whole weight or the full blame, because Zimbabwe, the way we are involved, is 100% involved. And most of the times, the bulk of the resources are supposed to.
Now, I want us to look at this. Just over the past week, there's been a lot of chatter between the Permanent Secretary for Information in this country, Nick Mangwana, and also the Mayor of Harare, albeit suspended, Jacob Mafume, where Jacob Mafume was saying that all procurement has been centralized in the President's office. And Nick Mangwana has been defending and saying it is the ineptitudeness of the MDC councils that has caused us to get to the place where you are saying is undesirable. Now, how do we find who is responsible and then get the responses when we are in that quandary?
Thank you. Quite a difficult question, but I think to be frank, without risking being unpopular, would be to say the current crop of councillors that we have, it has been somewhat, of course, a disservice. It has actually been ZANU-PF's strongest selling point. You know, they are doing the unbundling, you know, in the manner in which they've been, you know, discharging their mandates. You know, you look at self, you know, trading with shelf companies. That is happening in local authorities, you know, local authorities degenerating into elite-based self-serving institutions that are serving the interests, you know, of the elite, of the councillors first and those of residents last. And I'll pick an example, you know, I won't mention the city, but at the end of the term, the councillor had 47 stands to his name, you know, and you have a lot of shared deals happening where you have, for example, some let's say machinery that is owned by council, that is like I remember it was graders, you know, that they were council was supposed to sell them, to remove them from the asset inventory, and you had engineers from council buying those, you know, at subsidized price, and then refurbishing them, coming back to council to win a tender to develop some stands. But yet council would have said, you know, it's proper that can no longer be used. So those are things that have been happening under the watchful gaze, you know, of the councillors, certainly perhaps from the opposition. But that being said, you know, the centre now is parachuting itself into local authorities, repairing roads, all of a sudden, you know, appearing to be the savior, you know, in the problems that it was actually responsible, you know, for creating. So trying to solve a problem with the same mindset, you know, that helped create it. So for me, I think it's more or less like, you know, looking the stable when the horses have already bolted out, what central government is doing. But I think there's a need of a lot of cleanup to be done, you know, in local authorities, particularly looking at the by-elections that are coming, you know, a need for residents to start taking, you know, these elections serious, especially local government elections, when there's no water. You know, your councillor is the closest and most accessible, you know, structure of government that is, you know, first look up to when there's no water, when there's no electricity. So it's important, you know, that we vote quality into those offices. You know, individuals with a proven track record of leadership. Some of the councillors we have, you know, have not been to have not interacted with burial societies, you know, with the Ozibute, your street committees, you know, they've never been in any form of leadership whatsoever. So for them, I think it's been piloting, it's been seeing it as an opportunity to amass, you know, stands at the expense of service delivery.
But
and that's the reason why we're having this conversation.
What is pushing out those people that you would want to say are quality councillors or quality citizens? What is pushing them out from participating in these spaces so that they become councillors and offer quality service?
All right, so a lot of competition happens, for example, for parliament. You know, parliamentary seats, that's where you see your blessed, you know, throwing in their heads, wanting to get in. But what you then inherit at a local level, you know, are people who have failed to make the grade, sorry to say, you know, to be MPs. And then most of them are just party loyalists who are being rewarded with positions, but no track record of leadership.
So sitting here, what would be your appeal to political leaders in terms of selection of councillors? Because some people have argued that you need a certain threshold of education for someone to run for public office, which is not provided for by the Constitution now.
Yeah, I think education alone would be, you know, problematic, you know, if we are to qualify it on the basis of education. I mean, we've had a lot of councillors, MPs who are educated, sorry to say lawyers, most of them, you know, but the manner in which, you know, they've discharged their mandates is quite worrisome. So it should be coupled together, you know, with the track record, like I was saying, of leadership, servanthood. But I think what political parties should do is just to listen to their followers.
Listen and
not impose.
And not impose. That's wisdom. Just last week when we saw demolitions happening, they've been happening continuously. Now, I want to put my hand on the pulse and say, where exactly is the power of demolishing people's property coming from? Council or central government?
As a journalist, thank you. I would say I may not be privy to the actual legal ramifications on who has power on who, but generally, how we understand it currently, as for Harare, for example, we have a situation whereby government has created some sort of layers on top of local authorities. Because currently for Harare, we've got the provincial minister, Oliver Chitando. He has got power over city council. We've got the now secretary for devolution, Mr. Tussle, and we also have the local government minister. All these are offices that have got some form of power over the Harare local authority. And if you add on the fact that the mayor in his current state is just sort of like ceremonial, he is not executive. So you've got a situation whereby, yes, we've got a local authority that is vested with the mandate to run Harare, but in practice and in actual fact, central government still retains a lot of authority through those offices. It still retains a lot of power to mandate and to control the council. So you find that's where you find ourselves in a situation like last time where we got demolitions, which council was saying we are not responsible for that, but it was carried out by police officers from council itself. So it's a situation whereby government now just sends directives, say go and do that, go and do that. Council cannot refuse to do those things. So it's a delicate situation whereby this other side is the suspended mayor was saying that the losers are now directing the winners on how they should operate, because ZANU-PF as a party contested and lost to the MDC. But now when they're in office, the councillors from the MDC side have no power over those three offices which were selected by the losing party, ZANU-PF. So I would say ZANU-PF is the central government, is the central power. It still retains a lot of authority. But not to defend the local authorities, they've been failing their own standing for various and many issues. They've failed on some very basic things. You talk to some councillors about issues such as cutting grass along roads. And you find that within 10 minutes of talking about why they have not cut grass, they're already putting out a lot of political.
Layering the lines of authority on local government.
We are now witnessing a duplication of duties in the sense that what the local authority officials are supposed to do, in most cases, is now going to be done by the central government representatives. For instance, when you have the former provincial development coordinator, who is now more of a permanent secretary in the province, and also you have the minister of devolution. At the same time, we are saying that there is a mayor, there is a town clerk, and so forth. So you find that those duties are likely to have a conflict, because you also have the district administrators also operating on behalf of the government. And what would be the district administrators doing, for instance, in a district in Bulawayo when there are a councillor there? So at the end of the day, that's where conflicts arise, because people will be trying to do what they've been directed to do by their superiors. And in that case, there is likely to be conflict and people competing to outdo each other. For instance, what Emmanuel just pointed out, that we have the local roads now that have been serviced by the central government. And it is causing a lot of confusion to say that why are they not decentralizing the revenue streams as everywhere? Why are we centralizing the revenue streams so that at the end of the day we go back to the local authorities where that revenue was collected? And those layers that have been created at the end of the day, because as long as local authority representatives in the form of councillors, in the form of mayors and so forth, they are from another political party, and then we have provincial secretaries who are more like permanent secretaries in the province. We also have the district administrators. We also have the ministers of devolution from another a party, then there is likely to be a conflict, so to say.
So who's suffering because of this conflict?
We, the masses, are the ones who are suffering, because at the end of the day, like the old adage goes, when two elephants are fighting, naturally the grass suffers. So at the end of the day, we, the masses, are now suffering. I was listening to someone who was speaking there saying that there are some demolitions that are taking place. And you find that those demolitions are created so that there is that artificial crisis. And then someone comes as being a savior. So that at the end of the day, people will say, these are the better devils than the previous ones. But we all know the fact that central government yields a lot of power when you compare it to these local authorities, because the local authorities are the lower tier of governments. Because right now we have got provincial leadership, we have provincial structure or provincial government, we have the national government, and then we cannot expect the local authority tier to have more power and overturn what has been decided by the central government or the provincial leadership that is representing the central government. So at the end of the day, just like in the issue of commuter omnibuses that are now under the Zuko franchise, it is not that the local authorities where we reside and the ones that decided on that, but it was a directive from the central government through the Minister of Local Government. So that at the end of the day, even if we say, we get three well-known commuter omnibus companies or staples, now we are forced to use this Zuko franchise. So we can't say we are suffering in terms of traveling or commuting like what is happening of late. But we can't blame the local authority for that. But it is the central government that is now affecting our day-to-day lives. Their decisions are affecting our day-to-day lives. Even though we were expecting the local authority to be the one deciding on the traveling arrangements or the commuting arrangements. But well, we all know that the central government has got more power, and in most cases, we can have councillors maybe making a decision. But at the end of the day, what is implemented is what has been said by the Minister of Local Government and the local authority officials.
Now, I want to come to you, Manuel, and let's speak about demolitions. What is the situation like in Bulawayo? And let's start from there.
In Bulawayo, to be honest, we haven't seen much of that happening. So we have been reading about it, of course, in Harare, where people are paying to regularize the informal, could be informal settlements in wetlands, but for Bulawayo, we haven't been seeing much of that. Of course, we have a housing crisis that is manifesting itself differently.
When you say differently, talk to us about it.
Okay, I'll talk about, for example, your housing waiting list, which is more than 150,000 now, and a housing crisis when you're having a lot of people paying, to updating their forms, but not getting stands. And you have those who were given stands, could be 5-10 years back, the stands are not developed. The contractor was paid to develop, the contractor disappeared, or the money was eroded, by inflation. And then you have people now being asked to pay again, for those stands, for the servicing of those stands in Woodville. We have that in Mkanwin, we have Pomula, we have Makwekwe North, so, and the influx, of a lot of people from rural areas, from other cities in search for better lives in Bulawayo, imposing a significant constraint on the ability of existing infrastructure, to sustain them. So you'd find a lot of people sharing a house, average maybe could be 8 to 10 people, especially in Country Park, sharing house, sharing ablution facilities amongst 4 households, like what is happening in Mabutweni, lack of title deeds, lack of investment both from local government and central government, in easing the housing crisis. And the focus, you know, from private developers on the non-existent middle class. So you find most of those houses that are no one can afford them, you know, and most of it is substandard. Look at what is happening in Pumula, the house is collapsing, you know, when there are people on people, and then certainly the standards, you know, have deteriorated quite well.
So where does salvation lie?
It's a very difficult question. I think central government has a role, you know, to open credit line facilities, you know, for the ordinary poor in urban areas. You know, look at the growing bulge in terms of the urban poor. Both in Harare, Bulawayo, and other cities, you know, it's a new phenomenon, and it's a social grouping that is, you know, excluded even when budgets are done. You know, like I was saying, focus will be on the non-existent middle class, and then while ignoring, you know, the emerging new social bases. So government needs to come up with the robust programs, you know, to address the livelihood and welfare. You know, some could be having houses, but the quality of life in those houses is deplorable. You know, look at the Stojiwe, look at that place in Tongrove, look at even your standards of living. Some flats in Makokova, you know, it's quite worrisome. So it's just not the availability of a roof over one's head, but the quality of life, you know, in those houses. Some, for example, in Mabutweni, have been resident in their houses for more than 2 decades, but they still don't have title deeds. And without a title deed, it's difficult to develop your property. The police say you can't develop, it doesn't belong to you. So you can't even construct a toilet. So those residents are then sharing toilets, you know, waiting for a period where they'll be given title deeds.
Amazing. But Emmanuel, as you advocate for residents' issues from the Bulawayo Progressive Residents Association lens, what does 2023 offer, if anything?
I think you mean in terms of the election or the year?
The election.
Okay. I think for me, there's no salvation in sight. You know, if anything, I think things are likely to get worse. You know, it's unfortunate Zimbabweans are the only group of people that I know, you know, who believe that things must get worse before they get better. I don't know what the source of that kind of reasoning is. I don't think it's even the Bible. You know, so, but I'm here to say that things can actually get worse. You know, worse and worse and worse before they get worse. So, for me, 2023 will be a crucial year again. You know, service delivery for me should be a game changer. When people are thinking about this election, thinking about whom to elect for council position, you know, they should think about service delivery. You know, and to think about water, like I was saying, you have water problems even when water sources are full. You know, where do you find that? So the problem is actually man-made. You know, the failure to get water from the dam to the tap. You know, you can't blame that on God. You know, to say we are semi-arid region, there's no rainfall, there lots of rains.
I saw the president in Bulawayo recently opening taps and water was coming out. What are you complaining about?
It's actually, you know, worse than what you saw. You know, the problem is deep-seated, it's systemic, it's endemic. So in addressing it, you know, you can't address it, you know, over one day by, you know, just creating 1 or 2 taps and then claim to have solved the problem. So it's not just for Bulawayo. Look at the emergence of the water question in Zimbabwe. It's more than 10, 18 years after independence, you know, when we started waking up to say, but we got the land, but there's no water, you know, to water the land. And then we started waking up, but it was a bit too late. Here's all the debate that we're having now in parliament, wherever, about water. You know, if it's not Bulawayo, it's Maswingo. If it's not Maswingo, it's Harare, Mavugu. You know, residents spend more than 10 years without water coming from the taps. You know, post-independence, you see that we have a much more bigger systemic endemic problem. You know, that we need to deal with, even at policy level. before we look at practice.
Tebelani, do you think that politicians care about you, or they care about power and power itself?
To answer that question, let me say that the current crop of politicians that we have people who are hungry, people who have nothing to their names, people who have taken politics as a profession for them to get rich and richer at the expense of the masses. So the politicians of today are different from the politicians who liberated, or the politicians who were there when this country attained independence. The politicians that we have now, the majority of them don't listen to the masses. They don't care about the masses. They don't bother whether what the masses are complaining about is attended to. So we have a different crop of politicians. We have career politicians who see politics as a way to reach or attain their goals. So the reason why I'm saying that is because when you look at the councillors that we have, you look at the MPs that we have, they don't have meetings with the masses. They don't even open WhatsApp groups to the majority of them. And when you try to raise a point, they are actually behaving far worse than the Boko Harams of this world that we know. So we can't say the politicians that we have, the majority of them, they don't care about the people, but they care about their stomach, they care about their fame, they care about them being at the top in terms of corruption. So the majority of our politicians top the list when it comes to corruption cases. They don't care about the poor electorate that elected them to the offices where they are.
But Tembelani, so why are we going to elections?
Going for elections necessarily is not that we want to elect people who we trust, but it's a way of fulfilling the constitutional requirements for most of those politicians who will be elected. To them, it's a constitutional fulfillment requirement because without, you will realize that after these proclaimed by-elections, if you check the number of voters who are likely to participate, it is going to be very low. That is if we are taking from the past experiences that we have had regarding the by-elections. Because now in Zimbabwe, people don't know or they are not aware why they should vote. And the reason why people go to and vote most of the times is because they will be going there to vote for a presidential candidate instead of a local government official or councillor or even the MP. The majority of our MPs or the councillors that we voted for, we don't even know them. Why is it so? It's because people have become so ignorant to even the parliamentary or local government candidate, but they are only interested in ignoring the presidential candidate. And at the same time, the elected officials or the MPs and the councillors have taken advantage of that because they know that we as the masses of Zimbabwe, we as the electorate, we are not worried about doing background checks when it comes to assessing the capabilities of those officials or the elected office bearers. Hence, we have been taken advantage of. So, to me, going to vote for the majority of the people is to fulfill the constitutional requirements that elections have to be there at a particular period. Elections have to be there whenever we have vacant seats. But in truth, in reality, the people haven't realized the need to assess the quality of the candidates that are going to be voted for. Hence, the candidates themselves have taken advantage of the masses. And at the end of the day, we elect crooks, we elect autocrats, we elect people who don't care about the voters.
Tebelani, I'll give you this opportunity in closing. Your final remarks, Tebelani, to be able to educate, because you are saying that there's a problem as we go to elections. So now educate people for us through this platform, HSTV News, this program, the situation right now, brought in partnership with IRI. Why are our people going to vote? Why should they bother to register to vote and go and vote?
Thank you very much. It is important for people who have attained the age of 18 and are in possession of their national IDs to go and register to vote. Why doing so? Because registering to vote will enable our communities to have more representatives, because the more people register, the more constituencies are going to be there in a particular region. And if people are failing to go and register, it means the number of constituencies, when it comes to delimitation, they are going to be reduced. And then we find that the resources that were supposed to be shared, the national cake that were supposed to share, will be reduced in areas where the constituencies are reduced. And then we must go and partake or participate in the election so that we elect individuals that we want to represent us at local government level and means. Because these are the people who will be determining our future. And if we fail to elect the right people, then we are giving those people the leeway to decide whatever they think is good for them. Because the people who go and vote are the people who will determine our future. Because a public official will be representing all of us, regardless whether we are getting the electorate or the masses of Zimbabwe, all those who are above 18, to go and register so that they vote for the candidates of their choice, the people that are going to be representing them effectively. Because if we do not participate in elections, then we are saying someone has to think on our behalf without our mandate. And at the end of the day, that's why you end up having people you have never seen in your community representing you. And at the end of the day, we start saying, they have imported their own candidates. Yes, if as a resident, if as a citizen, you are not actively involved when it comes to elections, then someone will elect an official on your behalf, and that official won't be representing your wishes, your aspirations, but will be representing the wishes of those who will have elected them. So we ask the majority of the population of Zimbabwe, those who have not registered to vote, to please go and do so. Even if you fail to vote this coming by-election, but always you must be prepared so that when 2023 comes, you are able to go and cast your vote. You represent for the representatives that you want, and registering to vote does not mean you have voted. So it's important to register to vote, and at the same time, go and vote when that time comes. Also, let's go and register to vote so that we are able to share the national cake when it comes to sharing of the resources of this country through, for instance, devolution, the more the money that comes through constituency development fund.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tebelani Dube, for that very educative and just so passionate and complete plea that has come from you in the safe city of Lawai. Now I'm going to come to you, Wisdom. In your closing remarks, where do you find, as Zimbabwe, as a people, the power between local government and central government taking us, and how best can we deal with it?
All right. What I can say is that I think as a country there is need for a change in our, what I would say, our political culture. I think the way in which we are politically, it's wrong. There is a lot of, as Timlan was saying, the idea behind those who are participating in our politics, their motives and their agendas, they are all wrong. And I think it's all to do with our political culture that we are set in a wrong way. Because as he was saying, it has become a profession for some people. It has become a job. Someone is trying to meet his personal goals in life through politics. But politics, we know it's about power, and power is about sharing resources. It's about looking after the people in the country. So in other developed countries, you find that people who go into politics are already well established in their own lives themselves. They are not trying to find money through politics. They are already well established. They've done what they've done, and they are there to achieve some other goals which don't have anything maybe to do with money. But in this country now, it's a different situation altogether. So people are fighting to make a living through politics. So I think we have to deal with that first, so that we can maybe achieve everything else. Because as it is, it will be very difficult, because we are trying to remove people from their jobs. When we are saying let's vote somebody out, to that person we are saying let's remove him from his job. So somebody is going to fight you if you try to do that. So yes, I think we have to deal with the political culture in this country before we can make any progress.
I want to coming to you, Emmanuel, your advice to government, your advice to local authority, and your advice to voters.
Okay, thank you. I think to voters, that people should go out to vote because it's their democratic right to do so. And that it's a way of shaping electoral outcomes. It's a way of asserting their voice. It's a way of being heard. Who they vote for is not my business. It's their personal choice. But it's important to exercise that right to shape outcomes. And to further follow up on that vote and holding accountable those whom they have elected. It's unfortunate a lot of us are being rallied when there are elections, creating a voter out of a citizen, which is still my message to central government and local authority, that when they see us, they should not see voters. They should see citizens, engaged citizens who are passionate, about their areas they live in, the development, that matters the most to them. So there should be a public orientation, of the masses, a civic orientation of the masses on public issues of interest that matter to them. Citizens should be engaged before and after, during and after, post the ballot. Service delivery ought to improve. The voters need to be taken seriously, not for a right like, the issues that Wisdom and Tembelani were talking about, where councillors and MPs see, their positions as professions. We need to shift from that mindset, a fundamental departure from the usual way of doing things and doing business, So, and I think the other thing would be perhaps the center, I think, should allow local authorities, room to maneuver in space, to experiment, to implement, without too much interference. It's unfortunate most of it arises, from our legislation, which gives too much unlimited powers to the minister. Ends up interfering with the functions of local authorities. I think local authorities should give an adequate room. They are competent people that we have seen in councils. Despite all the bad apples that we are talking about, they're quite competent, quite serious people, who have been in local authority. We can pick, your Harare, there are certain individuals who are really passionate about developing the city. In Guero, look at Gweru, what is happening in Gweru. A lot of roads are leading to Gweru where people are going to lane. We should emulate that, and expand on that.
No, thank you very much, thank you very much, Tembelani and Wisdom, for this very informative discussion that we've had around local authority, the concerns of the people, the concerns that touch to the heart of service delivery, that touches to the heart of changing the face of our nation, because Zimbabwe cannot be Zimbabwe without properly run cities. It can't be. We cannot have a properly functioning government and run down local authorities. Or we cannot have totally good run down local authorities and a run down Zimbabwean economy. These are interlinked. They affect each other. So we need to have a nation that is built for the citizens and not for political power and power itself. But ladies and gentlemen, our viewers here at home, in Zimbabwe and abroad, across the world, who are reaching us through HSTV, radio and TV. We want to thank you very much for choosing us as your station of choice and choosing the situation right now as the platform for your current affairs, the prime platform for current affairs. Until next time, hope you enjoyed this program brought to you in proud partnership with the IRI, Heart and Soul TV and Radio, and Open Party. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ndofu, for coming through. Thank you, Mr. Due, for being with us. Thank you, Wisdom.
Thank you.
We think you should become a counselor.